Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Creator Hangout here at Kickstarter. I'm Terry Romero, and I'm talking to you from the Kickstarter HQ in Brooklyn. And this is a series that we do, a weekly series, where we talk to, it's a Q&A with creators from our community. And I am super stoked because today we have, all the way from wonderful Berlin, Justin P. Moore. He is an artist and a designer based in Berlin, as I mentioned before. He's the author of the Lotus and the Artichoke Cookbook series that is in both German and English. And it has recipes, photos, art, stories, all kinds of really awesome stuff based on his worldwide travels in over 45 countries. He has also masterminded many other Kickstarter projects as well, including 3 for his own cookbooks. Hi, Justin. How are you?
Hey, Terry. Hey, Terry, I'm doing great. Thanks for the opportunity to be on the Google Hangouts. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So there's so much to talk about because you have run 3 projects of your own, including helped out with so many more. And as we wait for, here's something, everyone, I want you to know that you, the live audience, can go ahead and ask us questions as well. There are 2 ways you can do that. You can post right here in the Google Plus Hangout, or you can go to our Twitter account. That is at, I'm just going to pull that up for you. You can reach us at Kickstarter Tips on Twitter. So go ahead, ask all those questions. So to get everyone warmed up, Justin.
Yes.
Okay, you're a cookbook author of many cookbooks. So can you tell me a little bit about your journey as a cookbook author? I understand you are an independent author, but you also work with a publisher as well. So how have you worked with your publisher when it comes to using Kickstarter to create your books?
Well, it's quite interesting. There's a very long story. I'm going to give you sort of the medium-sized version.
Okay, great.
Going back a little bit before the publisher and even before this book, I had always wanted to do a cookbook, and I've been cooking for a very long time. And I guess it was a few years ago I decided I was going to finally do the cookbook that all my friends were telling me I had to do. It was either that or open a restaurant. And I decided that after knowing a lot of friends that have restaurants, I thought, working 80 to 90 hours a week for a couple of years to try to get things stable was just not to my tune, especially if I wanted to keep traveling. And I was actually on a big trip in India, and when I went to come back to Germany, I was going to look for another job. I had quit my job as an art director and a graphic designer for a travel company. And I decided I was going to take 6 months and do the first cookbook, and that was the Lotus and the Artichoke, a cookbook based on my travels to about 40 countries, and all vegan recipes, because that's the style of cooking I've been doing for about 20 years. And actually, should I talk about how I found Kickstarter too, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So at what point you were inspired to make these books from your travels? You love cooking. At what point did it seem like I got to have Kickstarter? How is Kickstarter going to help me?
Well, Kickstarter totally saved me because I had already decided to do the cookbook. I had started a website and a blog, and I was writing recipes like crazy and really getting things together. And around the same time, I kept seeing on Facebook different people posting things, and I kept seeing this word Kickstarter. And like anytime there's a new app or a new website, people are talking about it, I always kind of tune it out. I'm used to what I'm already doing, and then it takes a little bit of time until I look into what something is. And I had been meeting up with some other designer and digital nomad friends of mine that do a lot of traveling. And I asked them, I said, do you know what this thing Kickstarter is? And they said, oh yeah, that's we have a few friends that tried that. That's like a crowdfunding thing. And we talked about crowdfunding. And I checked out Kickstarter, and it was like that sort of eureka moment where I finally realized how I was going to be able to publish this cookbook that I wanted to do, because I was trying to figure out how am I going to come up with like $5,000 to $10,000 to print this cookbook. I want to do it for real. And I found a few other cookbook projects and other vegan related projects that were on Kickstarter, and I was immediately addicted. Even before I decided to do my own, I started backing projects and looking into projects and seeing how they were made and checking out the mechanics with the videos and the reward structure. And I was totally fascinated by that. So I started sketching out, and after about a week, I had a plan for the Kickstarter and started working on the video. And this was all before I found the publisher. So at that point, Kickstarter and the 400 some people that backed the first project ended up being really my crowdfunding and the support, as well as the confidence to do the first cookbook. And it was only after that, I guess a few months later, a German publisher contacted me. And I immediately told them, I said, I will only sign a contract with you if I can continue to do things with crowdfunding, if I can do my own ebooks, if I can do things in a rather unorthodox way, the way that I think that an artist and an author and a musician should have the freedom to do things. And I don't know, I kind of put everything on the line, and I knew that I still had Kickstarter to go back to entirely if the publisher would turn me down. But they were delighted. They said they put out a German edition and an English edition, and they even asked me, maybe you'd like to go back on Kickstarter and help us learn about crowdfunding. And I told them, yeah, I'm going to do the German edition of the cookbook on Kickstarter, so we can already find some pre-orders for the book. And I mean, I would emphasize that I'm with a relatively small independent publisher. They only put out about 30 or 40 titles a year. But they're friends of mine, and they are connected with a lot of other mutual friends and business partners that I have. And they've been doing that for about 10 years. And I thought it was worth a shot. So we did it. And I was nervous a lot in terms of, at what point are they going to say, hey, you're doing your own thing with Kickstarter, and how does that work out? But we ended up making so many mutual deals. Like I designed the cookbook. I saved the publisher a lot of money in terms of doing the photography and the design, the illustration for the cookbooks myself. And in exchange, they basically say, well, you're kind of our first and biggest customer because you purchase about half of the books we print from the edition, and I have to use them for the Kickstarter rewards. So it's a mutually beneficial arrangement that we have.
That's awesome, Justin. So I want to definitely continue on that, but I'm just going to say that if anyone has any questions, you can post right here in the G Plus feed, and you can also go directly to Twitter to Kickstarter tips. So Justin,
yes.
So with the second book, this is pretty interesting. You did another project for the German edition only, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
and to try not to get things too complicated, I did the first book in English, which was this one. And the first edition was 1,000 copies, and they were pretty much sold out within a few months, and I was totally excited.
That's awesome.
And then we reprinted the English edition with the publisher, and we hired a translator and did a German edition of it, which I worked very closely with the translator. And that was what I went to Kickstarter for. And so that was the first book, and the first two editions of that. And then the following year, this was last year, I decided to do a Mexican cookbook, a sort of a follow-up cookbook. And I really had wanted to go on Kickstarter with that as well. But I mean, the time investment for a good Kickstarter project is so immense that I actually decided to wait until this year and do it for the third book. So. Yeah.
And I want to talk about that book really soon. So I want to go back to the German book, because it is the same book. So how did you talk about the same book but in a different language to your existing audience? And what kind of new audience did you discover or create or learn that you needed to reach out to about?
Well, one of the things that I focused on, because it was essentially the same book, and I was nervous that maybe Kickstarter wouldn't approve the project and say, well, you already did this. But I knew that it was going to be a German edition, and I knew that it was going to be very much focused at Europe and at Germany, Austria, and Switzerland primarily. And I focused on that. I focused on trying to help grow the interest in crowdfunding and in vegan cookbooks in Germany. And I really started working the networks hard here. And this was at a time that crowdfunding hadn't really come to Germany. It was just starting to pick up here. And some of the German crowdfunding sites they were no competition for what was happening on Kickstarter and the level of enthusiasm and excitement and the engagement you can have with your audience. And so I was very happy to be able to bring that here and to package the whole German edition as a means to primarily focus on the European backers.
Yeah.
But also to reach back out to my original backers and to try to get into the English-speaking audiences. And so I did put up the English edition of the book and tried to explain to people, hey, even if you're from the US, even if you already have the book, help me spread this message, help me focus on this international cookbook by doing another language. And so there's a lot of crosstalk. I've really enjoyed being an American and being here in Germany. It's cool to have the crosstalk where I'm feeding back to North America what's happening in Europe. And I'm also sort of a channel that a lot of stuff that's going on in North America kind of comes into the cookbook scene and the crowdfunding scene over here in Europe.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Now, you mentioned like the work that goes into it. Can you outline a little bit of, like, very roughly the preparation you've done for launching a Kickstarter project for your books? Like maybe the timeline and the things you thought about and like the communities and how do you talk about it?
Well, as far as the timelines, I would say that whenever I decided that I was going to do a Kickstarter, it always took place about 3 or 4 months before when it would need to launch.
Okay. Yeah.
And because I'm working on a lot of projects, I can't work on it exclusively for preparing it. If I could, you could do everything in maybe 2 weeks. I usually tell people that it will take at least 1 full-time week to prepare everything you need to for a Kickstarter, ideally 2. And that's assuming that you're going to work with other people to do your video, try to find someone that's going to do the sound and the music. And that's only just creating the project. I try to do as much as possible, but I also am not afraid to work with other people. I did my first 2 Kickstarter videos myself, but as Kickstarter got more and more popular and I saw that crowdfunding was a more and more saturated market, I wanted to kind of up the stakes a little bit, and I decided with the 3rd time to hire someone. And so there's, I mean, you become a manager as well as an artist and a creator of a project. And you definitely have to be ready to talk and work with other people and see what you can offer them and try to work together. And that's amazing for the outreach and for the PR and the publicity as well, is that, I mean, half the time when you contact people, just sort of a cold call or a cold email and say, hey, can you promote my Kickstarter? They say, hey, do you know how many times we get contacted by people who want to support the crowdfunding? I very rarely get those messages, actually, because I write a very personal, very real, and a very generous message to anyone that I'm asking for any kind of guidance or help or promotion from. And most people are actually really, really into it. It's a great channel to be able to provide a platform for not just what I'm doing, but for what other people want to do as well. I've always been very open to helping others and trying to share. I don't have any secrets about things. I have a lot of quirky ways that I do things, but I'll share that stuff with everybody. And I like working with people that have the same sort of attitude, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so glad you brought up like reaching out to those that do what you're maybe not specializing in, because I see you're in your amazing studio and I see your great art. But that's awesome that like you've learned how to work with others about like creating videos and other
absolutely
elements. That's super important. Yeah.
Crowdfunding is a lot about letting go and kind of going with the flow. You make this project, but you absolutely cannot see it as just this ATM machine that you're setting up on the street and people are going to just, hook it up so you can just pull the money out. It's got to be, you're kind of launching this boat, and you're going to see who's going to climb in. You're going to see which way the water's going. And I mean, through my different projects, I've learned that you absolutely have to expect the unexpected, and you have to have enough time to be able to do things. But you can't have too rigid of a plan. You have to plan in advance what could happen and kind of what different routes you'll go. But everything from choosing your target audience, or if you think you know your target audience, like within a few days of the campaign, you might realize you were totally wrong. And you're getting a response from a completely different market segment than you expected. I always tell people you have to have your core audience that you expect, and then you always anticipate there's going to be another subcategory of people, or even a larger audience that you didn't expect. That might be something that's related to your project, or might be because some totally extraneous blog picked you up, like a vampire blog or something, and suddenly you've got like 200 goths that are supporting your project, and your project has nothing to do with, the dark arts or whatever.
Yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's totally awesome. Can I ask you for a specific? I actually want to ask you first about, so after two really intense projects, wonderful experience working with your publisher, your third project, your really yummy, amazing looking Sri Lankan cookbook.
Thank you.
Can you tell me a little more about the lessons you brought into this, like being a seasoned creator? How did you do anything different? Did you do anything the same that kind of surprised you?
I did. I would say it was about half and half. I wanted to stick to a formula that I'd established with the 4 Kickstarters I'd already done, 2 for myself and 2 for other people doing like vegan scene related projects. And I took the experiences from working with the Vegan Zombie, for example. I helped them. I more or less ghost wrote their campaign and helped them manage it. And I learned a lot from that because I think we had like 900 or 1,000 backers, and there was just so much correspondence going on. And from these different projects, I really focused on as much engagement as possible with the backers and with other partners and with other Kickstarter creators. And I took all of that and tried to work it into what I was doing with the 5th one. It definitely helped me plan the reward structure. And one thing I definitely learned from my first 2 projects was whatever your budget's going to be, especially having to do with reward fulfillment and shipping, make your best guess at what the budget's going to be, and then multiply it times 50% or 100%.
Wow. It's okay.
I barely broke even from the first project because I had like $6,000 in postage expenses, and that was because my book weighed like 30 grams more than it was supposed to. So I mean, the bulk of my rewards immediately went from being a certain price to being twice that price to ship, and I had to make the decision of, do I want to try to find a cheaper shipping way? Do I want to ship this book rate? And I said, absolutely not. I want to do this so I can meet the Christmas deadline, and I want to make sure that the books get there. So I took the hit and put the money that I got from the backers and put it back into the project, and knew that I would recover from the next time I did a project and the next time that I had more books, which is exactly what happened. So you have to kind of work with those little stumbles and go forward with them. And this time I knew what I was getting into. So it's a lot easier for me to budget that. Although I haven't shipped this Kickstarter yet, so let's see. I did increase the size of this cookbook. My projects tend to grow. The product I'm making, when the Kickstarter financing goal exceeds its expectation, I tend to grow the project too. And this book went from being a planned 144 pages, now it's at 160 pages. I think with the first book I added another chapter and went from being, I think I added about 40 or 50 pages. It became a significantly larger book than I had planned, and that I had price quoted from the Postal Service and from the printers. And like I said, when it came time to fulfill the rewards, I saw I wouldn't be making money on it. But I had a commitment. I had something I really wanted to do, and I knew that it would still come back to me, and it absolutely did. I mean, within 2 months, all the money that had gone over the budget was flowing right back in from the stacks and stacks of books that I had from the printers and the publisher, and I was getting contacted from lots of media and all kinds of stuff, and all the response was generally positive. So it was totally worth it.
That's totally amazing. And I love how you talk about just the obligation to the people that have supported you. So everyone, we have about 10 minutes or so, and lots of time to ask questions. So you can go ahead and ask them right here on the Google Hangout, or you can run over to Twitter to go to Kickstarter tips. So Justin,
yes.
I love that you are an artist and a designer and a photographer, and I also do food photography as well. Is there anything you could share to our audience about some ideas about how to do their own really good product photography? It's something I would love to be able to help people out with more, and I know you have tons of experience. So yeah, as someone who takes their own pictures of their own stuff, Share some tips.
I have 3 tips right off the bat, and it really has to do with experience and with the equipment, but also with your attitude. So those are the 3 areas that you really have to focus on, pretty much with anything. But with photography and food photography, I found that having decent equipment helps, but you really, really need the experience, and that means a lot of practice. Of doing things and just not being afraid and just trying whatever you want and not listening to what anyone tells you. And, you know, I think that was really important for me because that was the only thing I had any sort of criticism from others with the first cookbook was, this looks like it was shot by somebody himself. And I said, well, it is. I did it on my own, and it's supposed to look like kind of how it looks when you cook it, not, look, this is some photo that was done in 6 hours with the pair of tweezers. It was more like, you know, here's the recipe. This is what it looks like when I do it. And you know, my photos got better over time. I had a lot of experience with photography already, but it took me maybe a year or 2 of doing food photography every single day to get to a level that I felt like the photos could be submitted to magazines and to other cookbooks, which is something else I'm doing now. And that element of just not listening when people are telling you, oh, food photos have to be from above and they have to be lit outdoors and you can't use artificial lights and you have to use silly plates and whatever. I mean, you do enough of something and you're going to figure out what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. When you do your photography, is it just you by yourself? Do you have someone else holding up a piece of cardboard? I mean, like, what's your setup usually like?
It's about half and half. Actually, for this last book, I did most of the stuff at my home kitchen studio here. And sometimes I have somebody that can help me holding with lighting. I always have somebody helping me with eating, if it's then or later. Right. And that's one of the greatest motivating factors for doing the food photography is I go out, I spend a bunch of money at the organic, you know, health food store or whatever. I buy all the groceries at the market around the corner, and then I come back here and I cook a couple dishes, and everybody I know is going to get stuff delivered to wherever they're working, or you know, people are going to come over here and we're going to eat together, and that's a blast. That's a lot. I mean, that's a really cool thing. You can eat your project if you're done with it.
Totally, and make friends, even more friends.
Yeah.
As a result. You talked a little bit about you know, your community and like surprises. Like I didn't expect backers from here. Do you have any particular stories about that? Because you have a lot of great support on Kickstarter. So anything you were like, wow, I didn't see that one coming. That's awesome.
I guess one of my initial surprises, and it's something that continues to surprise me, is that, and I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, that, you know, in terms of who you're targeting and who you think is your audience, I really thought that when I was going to make a vegan cookbook, that was going to be primarily for people that were vegan or people that were into vegan cooking or just getting a gift for someone that was into vegan cooking. And I very, very quickly figured out that the majority of the people that were supporting the project and were really into it and were, you know, communicating with me a lot were people that, yes, they were at least tangentially interested in the vegan thing, but they were also really into the travel aspect. And I've met some really cool people that have done some amazing travels. And I can't count how many people have contacted me and say like, oh, I've traveled so much. I always wanted to do a cookbook based on my travels. And the contact and the sort of the friends that I've built, not just from the cookbook and selling the cookbook and doing the Kickstarters, but also from one of the Kickstarter rewards I've always had. It was a dinner party, like a private dinner party. And I'm way into experience-based rewards. And I met the coolest people, and very rarely were they vegan. I mean, most of them were, you know, whether it was a cooking class or it was a dinner party, I usually ask people at the beginning and try to tell them, hey, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable, like you have to hide if you're not living 100% a vegan life or something. And usually half the people would say, no, I think vegan food's great. I love international food. I love Mexican food. I love your German recipes, and that's why I'm here. Or, I mean, the dinner parties were, I mean, you never know where the majority of your support's going to come from. And for me, the travel aspect seemed to resonate with a lot more people than the plant-based vegan food kind of a thing. And I love having the intersection of both with the books.
I love it. That's so great, because I often, like, when I talk to food creators, I'm like, consider having the experience of people having food with you. And
oh, totally.
yeah, I think that can be so powerful. And you do this anyway. You cook and you hang out with people. So it's like a dream come true.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I don't want to devalue my rewards because I have a fancy reward up there for a dinner party, but the truth is that I kind of give dinner parties all the time for people. Just, I mean, when I was planning the Sri Lanka cookbook Kickstarter, I talked to one of my partners here, Vegans, who has a chain of vegan supermarkets, and they also have show kitchens where they do cooking classes and other events. And I got together a bunch of the people that inspired me and that were helping me, like with the video, and other vegan cookbook authors, and said, hey, let's all get together. I want to throw a lunch party. And I talked to Vegans, and they said, sure, you can use the kitchen here. You can have your party. And
so cool.
We just had 10 people come over, and we cooked and made some photos and took some video and just had a good time. And I got to test the recipes, which is always great.
Oh, wow. I love it. Yeah. So many awesome things happening at the same time that you have to do anyway. So everyone out there, this is your last chance to ask questions. Go ahead, put them right up here on G+, or go to Twitter to Kickstarter Tips. So Justin, one thing I want to touch upon, and I think we talked about it a little bit, is you've got a lot of support from the vegan community on Kickstarter. Now that's an international community. So do you think you could talk a little bit about like the international quality that like Kickstarter has enabled you to reach out to people everywhere and the response you've gotten?
Yeah, it's something that I definitely focused on, and that I don't see enough emphasis with a lot of particularly North American-based crowdfunding campaigns, is that if you can go outside of your own national boundaries and realize that you have an audience all over the world, it's a really great thing. It makes the project a lot of fun, for me at least. And having a product that has another language, because my book is in German and in English, that definitely makes it a lot easier for me to reach out to the German-speaking audience. I can do a lot of the communication in German as well as in English, and try to do a good mix of stuff. But even just with English, I think with my last project, I had people backing me from like 35 or 40 different countries.
That's amazing.
And what's really cool is you can start to see where you're getting support from. In this last case, I had a lot of support from England and from Sweden, which was unexpected.
Yeah.
And one thing I always do is I always contact backers. I always look up everyone who's backing their project, and I kind of stalk them and see, what are they backing? Are they really into? And I'll write to them and say, hey, are you connected there? I see that you've backed 50 projects. That's cool. You're into Kickstarter. Can you suggest any projects? Can I back some projects?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of crosstalk, and a lot of people are really excited to hook you up with their network. And in this case, there were 2 or 3 people in Sweden that started posting stuff, and there are 2 or 3 people in England as well that started doing stuff with the like kind of foodies and vegan food scene stuff. Mm-hmm. And like I could see it because I was getting tons of backers from those countries.
Yeah,
you can really kind of amp that up anywhere you can, and you just reach out to bloggers and Instagram people, and those people are really receptive.
That's so awesome. So Justin, we are going to wrap up really soon, but can you, in just one sentence, describe a hopper? Because it was something we talked about, a Sri Lankan dish.
Well, there's actually 2 kinds of hoppers.
Okay.
Hopper is the English version or transliteration sort of appa, A-P-P-A, and appa is it's sort of a crepe. It's a bowl made from rice and coconut milk.
Yeah. And
it's made in a special little wok, and you usually put stuff inside it, or you tear it apart and eat the lentil stuff, the dal, and the pol sambal, the coconut chutney with that.
Yum.
Sort of like how Ethiopian food is eaten. But there's also a string hopper, which looks nothing like a regular, a bowl-shaped hopper. And the string hopper looks like a little bird's nest. And that's, you have to steam the flour. It's extremely complicated, actually. And it's something that's so traditional.
Yeah.
but it's pretty laborious, kind of like making your own pasta noodles.
Right.
You make these little noodle things, and then you steam
Yeah.
them in a little bamboo thing, and then you kind of top it or use that to eat the dal again with that. So all kinds of quirky stuff. Anytime you get into any country's food, it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And that on that note, this was a lot of fun. And I'm totally hungry now because it's post lunchtime here and kind of dinner time for you in Berlin. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so
thank
much.
you very much, Terry.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for joining us today.
Okay, thanks everyone. See you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.